Welcome to Currawinya National Park, home of the bilbies. It's beautiful. Red desert sands out here. Looks like they've had some recent rains, bit of fresh green pick coming up. And I'm spending 10 days out here on this trip. I'll be exploring every one of the 5 campgrounds, as well as the old pastoral relics from the sheep raising days. And I'll try and see if there's any wildlife around at the 2 lakes. So we'll see what happens. Head on in and see what we find. Well, I've made it to the turn-off to the 3 campgrounds. The drive-in was fairly easy. All the way just past Yulo was bitumen, and then the gravel track here was very well maintained. Just lower your tyre pressures down a little bit and no problems. But at the turn-off, there's a information hut here with some information about the local indigenous people, the native wildlife, as well as all the campgrounds. So I'll be staying 2 nights in each campground down here, just so I can take in the full area and see if there's any wildlife around. I'm sure I'll mispronounce these names, but it's Caiwarro Waterhole, Corni Paroo Waterhole, and the Pump Hole. I've arrived at Cairo Ruins, which is one of the former pastoral stations, so let's go for a walkabout and see what ruins are there. Looks like some bush ingenuity. Might be a hot water system, I'm thinking. There's a place underneath for wood to be put, a big drum, a lever which controls the top, how much smoke can get out, and a pipe heading up into the house. The steel structures lasted pretty well compared to the other several huts around the place. Looks like it was quite a big complex back in the day. I'm thinking this area here may have been a workshop. It's got some big ramps here which head across these wooden platforms. I think maybe the tyres went on there and the technician could look underneath the truck and seal the gearbox and transfer case and do work. Maybe not as high as you'd want, but if you squatted down you could probably fit down in there. Plus a couple of old engines. Belt drives probably ran some sort of pump or something. Typical in many homesteads. This is a pretty typical meat house from what I've seen in the bush. Basic construction with various poles for hanging up meat to dry out. They probably salt it and store it. And then you've got fly mesh all around. See the remnants of the last steel mesh. It keeps the flies out, stops the meat going off. Here's the old meat cutting slab. Still got a few cuts in the top. Probably a locally sourced hardwood. Who knows how many beasts this has taken on top of it. It's nice that it's still here. The few other houses that have been here have all been demolished. There's lots of rubble, but you can point out bits and pieces inside of porcelain, toilets, some of the flooring, so it's still interesting to see. Very basic looking houses, but I guess if you want to start up a station, you want to keep the costs pretty low. The sun is setting on my first night in Currawinya. I'm at Corni Paroo Waterhole, and there's several sites along the waterhole. I'm at the very last one, has a simple table, no facilities out here. You have to be fully self-sufficient. But it's a beautiful spot, very quiet, loads of bird life around, and it's great there's so much water around. It's a shame I didn't bring my canoe. Had one at home, but didn't think about that, bringing it into the outback, that there'd be too much water around, but this is just beautiful. So I am kind of, in some ways, disappointed that it's just so easy to get here. I was thinking it would be a lot more of a challenge. When I've heard of Currawinya in the past, I thought really remote park. It is still considered a remote park because you are out of contact here, no phone reception. But it was bitumen all the way to Yulo basically, and then sections of bitumen onwards towards Currawinya with a really well graded gravel track. So it's not as isolated as I would have thought it would be. But I'm still only in the beginning of the park. It's a very large park, one of Queensland's largest. So we'll see what the tracks end up being like. But I'm glad I'm doing this trip now and not waiting another 35 years when I retire, because I'd say by then bitumen will be everywhere and there won't be any real adventure left in Australia. Parts of Western Australia perhaps. But at least for now I can get away from it all and still enjoy the silence here, just me and the birds. Beautiful morning here. Quite a bit of bird life around and not too cold, thankfully. A few people around as well, so not completely isolated. But I'll head on back to the ruins, do some further looking around. It got a bit late yesterday afternoon and we'll see what else we can find. We're back again, let's explore some more. There's a levee built most of the way around the station to help mitigate some of the flood effects from any flooding that comes through the area. You'll see a bit of a rise up most of the way around. Don't know how it went for them. Wouldn't want to be sitting here if the creek goes into flood. One of the interesting things I like to find are the old cans. Look at this aluminium top with the steel body. Just look at that seam along the side. Very old. Long, long, long before my time. Yeah, it still sits out here virtually perfectly intact. Another find, an old glass bottle from the New South Wales Bottle Company, which is a pretty typical brand of the bottles I've found in Outback Queensland. But it's from 1954, so it's going quite a way back now. More bush ingenuity. 44-gallon drum turned into a little stovetop of some sort. Put the wood in. I guess you might have a cooking plate on top. Everything's very simple out here. Looks like most of the place was made from what I think is asbestos sheeting. It's just riddled throughout the place. Would have been a cheap material back in the day. Another ruin here. Very simple construction. It looks like it had a raised floor of some sort, maybe wood, and mostly made from asbestos sheeting. But I'm thinking this may have been the Aboriginal Stockman's quarters. Typically on stations, the Aborigines had their own separate area away from all the whites, and is usually a very simple basic dwelling, which this sort of looked like it might be, with very simple cooking stations. Nothing too flashy here. Orbell carbonated beverage Dubbo. Probably don't exist anymore, I'd say. Here's a U-Butte Golden Circle bottle. This is like quite a beautiful specimen. I've never seen anything like it in such perfect condition. It has a stamp on the bottom which says 56. I don't know whether Golden Circle ever stamped their bottles, but it could be just by the looks and the style with all the little pineapples and fruits and stuff. It could very well be from 1956. Certainly has that era look about it. Beautiful bottle. Pleased to remember that everything on a national park isn't is protected, so you can't take these bottles home. Just look, admire, then put back. Because I've been to one of the parks recently that I went to a year ago, and someone's taken all the bottles from it. So it's very unfortunate. This is a piece of history that belongs here. Once you put it on your shelf at home, it loses its significance. But someone out here once upon a time, back in the day, had a nice drink after a day out. So put this back down and keep on searching what else is around. Another fancy style of bottle. This bottle remains the property of Ackerstein & Co. Sydney. Just to think, back in the day, they used to keep bottles and recycle them, reuse them. Now we just throw everything in the trash and forget about it. Back then it used to have value. With a bit of searching, I've come across some of the old tip sites. So everything typically is taken a distance from the homestead and dumped out in the bush, just openly. And there's some here, and it ranges up that way. So it's a good view of what they had and how they lived. Some old automobile parts, more bed heads, loads of big tins, iron. Nothing particularly too fancy. The original form of transportation, horse. Just imagine that. So much distance to cover on a horse. Oh, I think I'll keep my old Defender. So we have a winner. New South Wales Bottle Company, 1935. I can only just imagine how crazy it would have been to get out here in 1935. It would have been really rough tracks back in those days. That would have been an adventure, and they probably had very basic motor cars, some old Ford or something, and trucks. Just think how far this bottle had to come all the way to this little station, just so someone could have a drink. Incredible. Looks like a few medicinal bottles and perhaps a belt buckle. A beautiful find here with the cast iron stove. Got this tree growing out the middle of it, and a vinegar bottle in the front. Could it be a new record? 1928. A pull tab which never got to see the day of light. Must have busted the can on a journey. Wasted all the juice. Must have had a few jam sessions. Old harmonica reed. Wouldn't have been much chance for music, I guess, back in the day, unless they had a fancy record player with them. I was wondering when I'd find an old vehicle, and I have. Don't know what it is, but it's a beautiful old specimen. 4-cylinder, very small engine. Look at those wheel arches, very cool. Look at how the wood is used on a car. I'm pretty sure these are both original on each side for the doors. And this board here might even be the original. Currawinya was declared a national park in 1991. Recent additions to the estate have extended its current size to 344,000 hectares, one of Queensland's largest parks. Named after Major Sir Thomas Mitchell, an early 1800s explorer and surveyor, is the Major Mitchell's Cockatoo, also known as the Pink or Leadbeater's Cockatoo.
They typically live in arid to semi-arid inland regions, but may be found along coastlines. Generally, they do not form large flocks, being found in small groups or in pairs, and are monogamous, forming lifelong bonding couples. I've made it to Cairarro Waterhole. Another beautiful spot, plenty of campsites along the waterhole. Just drive along, find a spot you like. Fairly quiet, a few birds around, but I'll spend the next couple of nights here, I think. Check out this gnarly gum. Just look how much is eaten out in the middle, but yet still alive. It's probably a few hundred years old, who knows? Incredible. Will not die, keeps on holding on. I set up camp a little earlier, so I have plenty of time to put on some roast veggies for tonight. It's broccoli, cauliflower, mushroom, carrot and sweet potato. Should be a good meal. And stick her in the oven. So it should be about 2 hour wait. I'll see how it goes. I'll try it without the aluminium foil this time. Normally I have foil, it just helps it cook quicker. But I think this time I'll let it sort of roast a little bit more on top. Beautifully cooked, only 2.5 hours. Beautifully soft. So, bon appetit. Crawl into bed and see how we go for the morning. Might be some wildlife around to see. The Brolga, or Australian crane, also pair for life. They are legendary for their elaborate courtship dances. I'm on walkabout at the moment, and I've come across this Bowerbirds Nest. Look at the way it's collected all this glass, even a spoon, shotgun, shell, anything you can find that looks pretty. A few bones. It's got a really well constructed bow there, very long. A beautiful thing. I've come across a Stockman's camp, ranging from around 1967, 68 and 69. That's what the bottles' dates are. So they must have loved their drink, a few cans, plus they would have had their tinned beef, bully beef, real simple meals. But everything just sits here, you just see. It hasn't broken down. It's been sitting here 50 years and yet it looks like it could be something that was just dropped here yesterday. How's the serenity? Just me in a beautiful waterhole, secluded, and lots of flies. You get used to the flies though. Just got to keep them out of the eyes, and the ears and nose, but yeah, beautiful spot. Not too much bird life around at the moment. It's a bit quiet, but there's plenty of tracks around showing some of the animals, mostly feral by the looks of it, pigs, goats. So, still I saw a few wallabies this morning. Beautiful though. I come across a researcher's pitfall traps, all deactivated at the moment, so there's no research going on currently, but it's set up as basically a tub which is buried down to the lip in the ground. So any critters that walk along here fall straight in. It's really hard to get grip on a plastic drum, so they can't get out. And the researcher can come back each day and see what little lizards and small snakes or beetles, other insects all fall in. I did these back when I was at uni It's always interesting to see the kind of spiders and other bugs that fall in. Problem is, if you get too many lizards fall in with too many insects, you get a lot of fat lizards. Makes it hard to get a good representation of what's actually in the area. But the lizards are happy, everything's caught and then released. Yeah, it's good to see that they do some research out in the park. It looks like I've reached this end of the Caiwarro Waterhole. It seems to peter out and just form a narrow stream. So I'll turn back around, head back, have lunch, then go exploring the opposite direction, see how far I go. Welcome to my fortress. Simple little idea I had when I was in Charleville. Thought I might need something to keep me sane while I'm eating lunch. Fairly makeshift, but it will do. Beautiful. I spoil myself sometimes, but while the going is good, I've got this fresh food. Had some here for 10 days though. Most of my meat will be eaten, so I'll be up to 10 tuna and whatever else I got left in the box. So look at that. That's a sandwich. Bon appetit. Well, I'm fed, had a nap for an hour. Now I'm ready to tackle the rest of this waterhole and see what's around the other corner. Let's get moving. I have the fly net on now, just as a bit of relief. There's only so much a man can take. At least this keeps them out of my eyes. There's always a risk of getting an infection too in the eyes if they get in there too much. Had that happen before when I was on the Untitled Track. They just wouldn't stop attacking me. Kept crushing in my eyelids, digging them out. Starting to get a bit red. Found a bed frame. Looks like it might be from the old Cairarro Homestead. Like those other ones I found at the dump, but someone's probably snaggled it out of the tip and brought it here as a bit of a bed to lean against. Something to sit back on and admire the view, maybe sit and do some fishing. It's pretty comfortable, well, that could work. Lie out here underneath at night, look at the stars. Starting to see some turtles pop their heads out, which is really nice to see that there are some in here. I saw some fish jumping out yesterday afternoon, so the water's got some life in it. Found the remains of a young goat. I may have been beat on this one. It just keeps on going, and I don't think I'll have enough sunlight left to get to wherever this ends and back to camp in time. But it's nice to see a bit of different country. It does get a bit narrower and there's a lot more turtles around. A little bit further and then I'll turn back. Looks like I've hit the border fence, so I might return back, heading up along the top now instead of along the waterhole, and see what else there might be up here. If you've enjoyed this video and would like to help support the creation of more videos and see behind the scenes and bonus content, join me on Patreon. Click on the Patreon button on the site now. Thanks for watching.